Hello and welcome to today's webinar on project scheduling. This is the very first webinar in our second Lunchtime Lightbulb series, getting the most out of your people and projects. And we're so pleased to have you join us. Welcome to those of you who are newcomers, and of course welcome back to those of you who have joined us before. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Sarah Sabel, and once again I'm joined today by Michael Meir, CAL Director and Lecturer. Hi Michael.
Hello Sarah, hello everybody.
Now before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to run through. This webinar will run for about between 40 and 45 minutes, and I will open up the floor in the second half to your questions. So if at any time during Michael's presentation you do have a question that you would like to ask him, then please just type it into your questions or chat box on your dashboard there, and I will read them out so that Michael can answer them for everyone to hear. This webinar will also be available for you to keep. Once we're done here, I'll make sure that you have access to our very own YouTube channel and the link to this webinar along with the PowerPoint slides. Now, Michael, I don't know much about project management. It's not one of my strengths, but here's what I do know. Scheduling determines the timing of operations in the project. The schedule will determine the specific start and completion dates for the project and all project activities, and scheduling is about the action or doing it phase. In scheduling, you answer the question, when will the work be performed? How did I go, Michael?
Oh, very well, as usual, Sarah, very well. Scheduling includes the project start and completion dates, project deliverables and milestone dates, the start and completion dates for all activities needed to successfully complete the project. So project scheduling provides the basis for effective communications within the project team. It establishes a baseline for product status monitoring, reporting and control. It facilitates effective management and provides the basis for resource analysis and levelling, the exploration of alternatives and cost-time trade-off studies. Project schedule will consist of project activities, schedule start and completion dates for each activity, project completion date, and where appropriate, project schedules can also show important deliverables like task products, key events and major decision points, interfaces and links and critical path and slack, and the cost of resource loading. The schedule is the key for managing the entire project start to finish, including all major milestones and major activities. Usually the project manager develops the schedule and is responsible for executing the project according to its milestones. In practice, there are two types of schedules in the projects. The baseline schedule, the original sign-off schedule, and of course the current schedule, reality, the actual status of the project at a current point in time, and it shows the work performed and the milestones accomplished. Comparison of the two budgets, now you can see that on the screen. The comparison between the budget and actual performance can show you just how well a project is tracking according to its original timelines.
Great, thanks Michael. I will interrupt you there just for a second while we run a quick poll. So in just a second you will see on your screen the question. On average, over the life of your projects, how much would your timeline vary from planned to actual? With the answers there, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, or 40+%. We'll just wait for all of your votes, all of your answers to come in. So far we've got a few, we've got quite a few coming in for 40+%, Michael. Okay, so we have 100% who have voted, thank you very much. And we have 38% say 20, 25% say 30, 13% say 40, and another 25% say 40+. Michael, is that a surprise, or is that what you thought would happen?
It's pretty much reality in projects, Sarah, that Having people, 30, 40%, 40 more than 40% over project time is pretty common.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'll just close this, and then Michael, perhaps you could run through with us today what you're going to cover.
Right. Well, Sarah, today our agenda is we're going to do definitions, the A to Z of basic scheduling terms, a step-by-step schedule preparation, Gantt charts, milestone monitoring, and of course we'll deal with your questions. Now, if we start with definitions, the A to Z of definitions. Sarah, there are 17 basic project terms that you need to know for project scheduling. Of course, there are more than these, but 17 is a fairly good place to start. Now, if we look at them, these can run through from activity to actuals, through deliverables, dependencies, network diagrams, resources, tasks, finally down to work breakdown structure. So let's work through these one by one so that we're very clear of what they all are. Now, an activity. Smallest unit of work having 4 characteristics: a definite duration, logical relationship with other activities, use of resources, and some costs. And it's often used as an alternate term for task. And actual. Actual says exactly what it means. Commonly refers to actual time and cost compared to budget or estimate. A baseline. Baseline is the approved planned schedule or cost. By comparing actual work done and progress, the need for preventative or corrective action can also be very quickly worked out. A constraint. A constraint is something that's fixed and or must happen on or before a particular date. Can be a budget or a specific product. Usually something like a must start on, an MSO, or not finish later than is a constraint. A critical path. Critical path, longest time required to complete a project without any delays. It's the series of tasks that, if they were delayed, would push out the project end date. The logic is that because there's no delays, this must mean it's the shortest time possible for the project to be finished. Deliverables. Deliverables, the product, service, or even the project intended outcome. It can refer to the end or final product or a series of delivered outcomes which in combination achieve the final product. Dependencies. This is a link between a predecessor task and a successor or subsequent task. A dependency controls the start or finish of one task relative to the start or finish of another. 4 types of dependencies. Finish to start, an activity needs to finish before the next one can start. Start to start, an activity can start once another activity has started. Start to finish, an activity must finish before another activity can finish. And finish to finish, an activity has to finish in order for another activity to finish. Let's move to duration. Duration refers to how long or span of time an activity will take to finish. Effort, the number of person hours required to complete a task. Float or slack. Float is the amount of time a task can be delayed without delaying the start date of another or successor task and or delaying the project completion date. A network. A network diagram is a drawing of the logical relationship between project activities. It's always drawn from left to right to reflect project start to finish activity. A milestone. Now, milestones, project deadline or the completion date of a significant project outcome or deliverable. Predecessors. Predecessors, activities, an activity which determines the start or date or finish date of a following activity based on a logical relationship. Now, refer that one back to dependencies. Resources. Resources are the people, machinery, equipment, materials, finance, other inputs required to complete an activity. A task. A task is a specific work item that usually results in the partial completion of a project deliverable. Tasks have, just like activities, finish and start dates, and other basic building blocks of projects. Work, the total scheduled effort, generally calculated in person hours, required to complete a task. It's not the same as duration, which is the time allocated to complete a task. The calculation of work is work equals duration, time, multiplied by effort, units of person time. And the last one which we'll use today, and that's of course the work breakdown structure, WBS for short. The WBS represents the goal, objectives, tasks, subtasks, work packages, using a hierarchical tree, as you can start to see on your screen, which shows all the levels of the breakdown. So here's the hierarchical breakdown of all project tasks by logical grouping and sequence. Now, as you can see in the example of a fairly simple work breakdown structure for landscaping a garden up here on your screen, and you can see it in diagrammatic form like this, or it can also be in a table. Now, that's all about it for definitions today. There are a lot of important content included here, so it's important that you need to get your head around just what we're talking about. Now that you can see what we're talking about, we can start to prepare an actual schedule. A schedule is only as good as the work breakdown structure it's built on. Schedule makes it a very clear case of rubbish in, rubbish out principle. Many things such as lead time, lag time, task types, resource availability can affect scheduling. It's important to understand the dynamic effect of these elements, what the effect they can have on a schedule. When it comes to scheduling, the old adage, plan the work, then work the plan, really does apply. After you've identified the project activities, you can use the following steps to develop an initial project schedule. So first off, you need to identify immediate predecessors for all activities. Now, where we have two tasks that have a relationship between them, one will be the predecessor and the other the successor. We need a predecessor as a task that drives the start date of a successor. The predecessor is the task which drives another task and dictates when that task can start. So if we go back to our example of the garden landscape, you'll see all the predecessors there. You'll see them under task dependencies. The predecessor is the task which drives another task and dictates when the other task can start. Now, if we look at our first task, designing the garden. You can see that there are 4 activities in this first task, and for this first task there are no predecessors. But as we break each down in turn into the 4 activities, you can start to see that each one must be completed before another begins. But if you move on to clearing the land and levelling the site, that you can see that 3 of these 4 activities have no predecessors, so they can all be done at the same time or in any order, but number 3 needs to be done before activity 2.2, complete clearing, can be fully done. So immediate predecessors define the structure of your network diagram, as you can see here. Now, the landscaping example here that we've used, I've put up 2 diagrams. One of the 2 of clearing, and you'll see here it's task 1, and we've moved to task 2 now, and it's clearing the land. And you'll see in there that there are 4 or 5 activities, but that activity 2.2 is followed by activity 2.5, and that last activity relies on 2.2 being finished really before it can start. Now, the other tasks, the other 3 tasks, are independent. Now, if we move to this next one, concrete and paving, you'll see in task 3 that activity 1 is independent of the others, and they can start at those 3.1, 3.2 can start at the same time, but that 3.2, 3, 4 and 5 are all follow sequentially and so need to be finished in sequence. The next one, if we go through, the next thing we can start to do is determine the personnel and non-personnel resources required for all the activities. That is the type, amount, availability of resources that affect how long you will need to perform each task or activities. The next is duration. Now you'll recall that our definitions, that duration is the amount of time required to complete a task. Effort is the amount of person hours required to complete it. The amount of work required to complete a task is calculated by multiplying duration, time, by effort. Key variables are the available time and availability of people. Now if we go back to our network diagram, you'll see here, top right hand side corner, there's the estimated duration for each of these tasks and activities that comprise the task. So the total duration for the task of clearing the backyard, we can see under task 2, is 5.5 days. And then you can see then how long each of the separate activities will take within that. So activity 2.3, for example, is getting the work crew and tools organised, and that'll take a whole day to get ready, whilst activities 2.1, 2.2, 2.4, so things like getting the dump in, organised, completing the clearing and hiring the machine necessary to will only take half a day. Then activity 5, that is clearing up and levelling the site, will take 3 days. Now the next step then is to identify all immediate and final dates that must be met. These dates define the criteria that your schedule must meet. Then you need to identify all necessary activities and milestones outside your project that have an impact on your project's activities. After you identify these external activities and milestones, you can set the appropriate dependencies between them and your project's activities and milestones. Then, finally, you can put together a comprehensive plan. Now, then we need to start to draw a network diagram. You can then use that diagram to determine the schedule on what projects you'll have. Like the example we've got here, you can start to see up the top we're planning and building, and it can start on the 1st of July. It must finish within 21 days. But if we go right down to the bottom right hand side, we can see there that the start dates and milestones there are the 29th. So we've got to fit the project in right between all of that. So we've got to make sure that our architectural plans, our project plans, preparing the budget, don't get delayed or fall out of whack, or frankly we won't be meeting our timeline of a total of 21 days. Now, we can then start to analyse our project's network diagram to identify critical paths and their links to identify the slack times and non-critical paths. This information helps you choose which project activities to monitor and how often to monitor them. It also suggests strategies for getting back on track if you encounter unexpected schedule delays. Now, tip. Now, beware here. Beware of planning backwards. Developing a schedule by backing in. That's starting at the end of a project and working your way backwards towards the beginning date to identify tasks and activities and estimate durations that will allow you to get to the desired end date. It's a very, very common way of planning something, but it has its perils. If you back into a project, you substantially decrease the chances that you'll actually meet your schedule, because you may miss activities because your focus is on meeting a time constraint, not on making sure that you've identified all the required work. Your base for duration estimates on which you can allow activities to take rather than what they'll require. The order in which you've planned the proposed activities may not be the most effective one. So, to sum up our 7 points here in 5 points, develop the list of project activities, sequence the list of project activities, determine the relationship between each of them, establish a duration of each activity, then determine the project duration, start and completion dates, and the start and finish dates for each individual activity. Now, all right, now let's have a look at a Gantt chart and the role it plays in scheduling. It's important to remember that the Gantt chart is only one of the many tools you can use to help you manage your project more effectively. And before you start using the chart, you need to have all the information before you. So let's look at how we put it into a graph. A bit of history. Gantt charts were developed by Mr. Henry Lawrence Gantt in the 1910s. Now, Henry was an engineer. He was also a colleague of Frederick Winslow Taylor of scientific management fame. So, frankly, he might have a bit to answer for. A Gantt chart's a graphical display showing the project tasks, the duration, timelines and schedule. A Gantt chart's a production schedule in the form of a horizontal bar chart. It shows the project activities and tasks in sequential order, with the bars representing the time estimated to complete them. The chart graphically depicts the time relationship between activities, tasks, milestones and resources. And as you can see here in this very simple chart, now looking up the top, you'll see the vertical line lists all the, down on the left-hand side, lists all the project activities in sequential in order, and the horizontal bar shows where they commence and or when they commence, and an estimate of how long they'll each take. A Gantt chart is a great way of showing the time relationship of activities and resources in a project. It can also show you milestones, as you can see. So let's work our way through the diagram. You can list all the tasks that must be performed in order to complete the project in the first column on your left. Then, in the next column, assign one or more people to complete the task. Then, determine the task sequence and the time required for task completion. And then finally, 4, you can mark milestones to indicate critical schedule points. Like all living things, it's a flexible and dynamic document that requires regular updating throughout the life of a project. Gantt charts focus on the 3 great project constraints of scope, time and cost. A change in any one of these can result in a change in one or either or both of the others. So it's a great tool for tracking the consequences of changes in any of these 3 constraints. Also, the Gantt chart usually includes the major activities and tasks of the project, the project milestones, the interdependencies between phases, tasks and activities. It has a unique identifier for each phase, activity or task. It has a timeline and the person or resource responsible for each item. You might ask, why use a Gantt chart? Well, it assists in determining how long activities and tasks will take. It assists in determining relationships. It can help identify the critical path, the shortest possible path from the first activity to the last without any delay. It can be very used for baseline reporting, can assist with delegation and managing team workloads, can assist in determining how long the project will take, including in analysing the effect over the overall time frame of activities or going over time. It can assist with identification of project risks by showing areas of uncertainty. It can assist with the management of risk by showing the effect of project timelines of a risk occurring. And it can confirm a common understanding of the project timelines between the sponsor, the steering committee, senior management and the project team. Very good idea there. Why have one? Now let's have a look at preparing one. Now frankly, whilst you can do this on anything you write on, it's a lot easier to frankly use software in doing it. Many people still use Excel, but Microsoft Project is pretty much the standard. Although there are some freeware packages available and they can be sourced online. A useful freeware package is called Gantt Project, all one word. You can see a screen view of this software and some of the key areas highlighted on it. Having said that though, look, Microsoft Project is popular with project managers because it's standalone and it's relatively easy to install and use in a project environment. So then let's briefly run through the Microsoft package and I'll show you what I mean. MS Project is quite a powerful project planning and management tool. Among its many functions, it can be used to create a project, schedule tasks, align and manage resources, provide costing information, track actuals, and of course produce reports. It's made up of two databases or tables. One is used for storing information relating to tasks and the other stores information on resource. The tool combines this information into the project plan. So there are two aspects of MS Project's use. Firstly, it can be used as a reporting tool to show us what's already happened. And secondly, and frankly more importantly, it can be used as a management tool to show us what will happen and what will happen to our plan in the future once the project's underway. So with everything, if the software isn't being used correctly, then it won't work well for yourself. And many self-taught PMs are only using Project as a reporting tool rather than gaining the full benefit from it as a forward planning tool. If you want to get the most out of the program, then I suggest you invest time and money wisely in an MS Project short course. That'll show you how to use the software and to report retrospectively and also as a forward-looking management tool. So let's have a look at just what Project looked like. And I've got some screen dumps here with me in which we can run through. Now if we look at the screen that opens for a new project and then starting on the left, you can see over there that we've got task ID forms, and they'll vary depending a little bit on the versions you use, but task ID forms, tasks, names, predecessors, durations. You can add further columns as you need them, but some of the columns often used are start and finish dates, resource names. You can add even further columns as you need them. Then if you need to list the project work, and for this you need your WBS, in the rows down the left hand side, task name, column list all the project high level activities in separate cells, and then under each of these high level outputs in sequence list all the tasks needed to produce them. And if necessary, you can break down each task or activity into smaller tasks. The next column is predecessors. Here you enter the cell number of the predecessor task needed to finish in order for this task to commence. Then the final column shown on this project is the duration. When you prepared the WBS, you will have also calculated how long it will take for a task to finish. Enter that figure, now usually calculated in personal days, against the appropriate tasks. You'll recall we did this using the network diagram and calculated the time it would take for each activity with the total time for all the task activities. Now, as I mentioned, if you want to, you can enter the proposed start and then the proposed finish date, and you can identify resources here, so you just enter the names of the person responsible for the completion of the task. The next critical thing to add to the Gantt chart are project milestones. Milestones are significant events that act as progress markers for a project, and they're usually linked to the completion of a key project activity or task. The completion of the task output is always called a milestone. As you can see from this diagram, milestones are shown on the chart by adding a black diamond marker on the timeline and described as things such as maybe team assembled or model developed or lease assigned. So that's pretty much the content of a basic Gantt chart. The software will automatically calendarize the chart for you. Of course, there's much more you can put into spreadsheets, such as budget cost, actual cost, budget hours, actual hours, planned progress and completion, actual progress completion. These factors can be very useful in tracking and predicting variance with the original baseline budget and timelines. But look, that's a topic for another whole time. Now, before we close today, I would just like to say one or two things about milestone monitoring. As we've seen, milestones are significant schedule events in the life of a project, and often the planning achievement dates of milestones project obviously change over time. The Milestone History Monitor is a table or chart that you can use to show the way in which milestones have been rescheduled during the course of the project. It usually includes the milestone name, planned milestones, achievement dates for each milestone, and review dates. At regular review dates, the project manager assesses the project progress and reviews the planned achievement date for each milestone. The new planned achievement date for each milestone is then recorded against the review date. So a milestone history monitor is developed to monitor project performance on a basis of time. It presents a clear picture of any milestone slippage. It can assess the significance of milestone slippage and provide the project sponsor or steering committee, senior management, with a record of project slippage. Tracking planned versus actually quickly shows up a project status. There's no magic in preparing a milestone monitoring task. A simple one can easily be done in Excel. Enter the planned milestone dates. That gives you the baseline. By entering the actual milestone achievement dates, it's simple to show the gap between actual and what was planned. Remember, a milestone history monitor shows the performance of a project with respect to the timeline only. It doesn't show changes to cost, quality or resources, or the realisation of project risks that might be associated with reasons of the milestone rescheduling. It's not a panacea for everything, but it's a very good, quick tool.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Now that you've taken us through all of this great stuff on project scheduling, I am going to open up the floor to questions. We've had some great questions coming through. Please jot them down now if you do have any more excuse me, to ask Michael. Michael, the first one, a quick one for you. What does MS Project cost?
Sarah, an academic version's about $240. The full license version for an office where you might have 7 licenses, that can run up to $1,400 plus.
Okay, and how hard is it to learn how to use MS Project?
Sarah, it's not that difficult. The thing is that you've got to be using it and play with it all the time. And the great key to it, we learn by doing, so by using it all the time, you'll pick it up quite quickly.
Okay, the next one is, what about the freeware example you showed us? Is this as good as MS Project? That was the Gantt.
Yeah, no, it hasn't got all the features on it. There's still quite a good project program for basic stuff. Hasn't got all the tools, but as you get to more sophisticated projects and things like that, I would suggest you start using MS Project. It pretty much is the expected benchmark.
Okay, and another one here, I use MS Windows and I've noticed that Excel has many of the tools that you've mentioned. Is it okay to use Excel, and when would you expect that I would need to get more purpose-built software like MS Project?
Oh, Sarah, massive number of projects are still planned using Excel. It's still a very, very common tool. However, it doesn't provide what Project does. So as you get into bigger and more sophisticated projects, I would really suggest to you that you pick up with MS Project. It's a bit like using a fax machine rather than email using using Excel.
Excellent. Well, there's one more come through, I think. Let me have a look here. Oh, what about Primavera? Primavera?
Yeah, good proprietary program. Well, yeah, very useful. Good program.
Okay, excellent. Nice. Short and sweet one to finish there, Michael. So that wraps it up for today for our webinar on project scheduling. Thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed our very first webinar of this second series, and we're looking forward to having you along for all of our fortnightly sessions. Don't forget to send us your suggestions if you have any and you would like to us to purpose build a webinar for you. Our contact details are on the screen now. You can visit our website, email us through, give us a call, like us on Facebook and check out what's happening there, and also watch this webinar and all of the previous webinars on our very own Cal YouTube channel. And also maybe check out the college website for our short courses on MS Project, Michael. Thanks for joining us today, Michael. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye for now.